get
Oh,
this.
what a great slide.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so this is what this is called. It's called a simple formula for telling your story. And so this is something that works for you, whether it's your book or if you're telling the story of your business, which in branding we have to do. And I have to say that I've heard of the exercise coach, so you've made an impression on me. And I think of it as this high-end kind of exercise coaching that's, you know, just fun and serious, but not like Gold's Gym kind of thing, you know. So anyway, I was excited to see you on there because I'm like, oh, I've heard of that, you know, and I have a favorable impression of that. So when you're talking about branding, that's what you want to leave people with, is a favorable, approachable impression. And so I'm going to talk to you about a formula for telling your story that'll allow you to connect with your audience and, you know, give them that favorable impression. So, so it's called a simple formula for telling your story. So all along, whether you're in social situations or business situations, people always are trying to find out what's your story, but they don't come up to you and say, hey, what's your story? You know, they'll ask you questions like, you know, what do you do? Where do you live? What kind of work do you do? Where did you go to school? Things like that. But what they're always doing is they're probing into trying to find out who you are and who is the who behind you. And so they ask you all kinds of questions to start to figure out who you are and what your story is. But, and it's really important because how you tell your story, whether it's about yourself or your business, is critically important. And it's just as important, if not more important, than as the story itself is. So let's talk about a couple of things that aren't your story, because you want to avoid laying these things on other people when they're trying to find out about you. So the first one is your story is not your resume. Nobody wants to know your, you know, I was born here and I did this and this and this, you know. Nobody cares about that. That'll shut people down fast, you know. So it's not your resume. It's not your family tree. And here's really important. It's not an elevator pitch. Now there are places for your elevator pitch. When we're talking about branding and storytelling, you're not giving them an elevator pitch. You're really opening up yourself to them so they get to know the you behind your brand. So your story should communicate the essence of you and your business. And before you can really communicate with anybody or really share what your story is, you have to really know that story yourself and get good at telling your story so that you can create a connection with the person you're speaking with. Or if you're not speaking with them, if it's branding and it's not a two-way conversation, you still need to communicate that essence of your story and your business. And so stories play a really important role in our society, and they always have. And storytelling affects your brain in a different way than giving out information does. It allows you to access different parts of your brain. It allows you to, I'm going to use the word manipulate, but I don't mean it in an onerous way. It allows you to, let's say, activate parts of the person's brain that will cause them to remember things. So, for example, if you activate these things, such as sensory areas in their brain, or what things look like or tasted or smelled or felt like, etc., that causes them to remember things about you. And so I would say that as in the exercise coach, because I've heard of it, but I don't have any personal experience with that, you've done something in your branding and storytelling that caused me to have an impression that this would be a safe, professional, clean place to try to fulfill my physicality goals, you know. And so you've done a good part of that. But you never want to underestimate the power of your story. And I believe that our stories and our businesses are intended to offer people two things. And those two things are hope and help. They come to us because they have an issue or a problem or a desire, an unfulfilled desire, and we give them hope that they can achieve that, and then the practical help in order to do so. So those things are going to allow you to connect. When you offer people hope and help, you're going to be able to connect with them in a personal way that makes a standing impression on them. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So how do you tell your exceptional story? So everything I'm going to teach you here today has to do with whether you're writing a book or whether you're writing about your business and trying to market your business. And so I have a couple of formulas that have worked out, that I developed, that have worked out really, really well for people. And it's easy to craft your story this way. So the first thing you have to do is you have to know your purpose. And so and the other thing you have to know is who's your audience, right? So your audience isn't for everybody. You know, my audience isn't for people writing children's literature. We do adult nonfiction. And so you have to know those two things, you know, your purpose and your audience. And once you know those things, then you can start building on this foundation. So I'm gonna, all along the way, I hope you guys have something to write on or whatever, because we're gonna try to do workshop things with this. So you start off, and it's good to distill everything down into a purpose statement. And we do this for books, but for your business too. And you may have a mission statement or a vision statement, but you may also think that you haven't really thought about a purpose statement. And this is what really is helpful to people. So you just say, the purpose of my business is to fill in the blank. And so my example here is, the purpose of my business is to give people the courage to tell their truth and the tools they need to write a high impact nonfiction book that will save lives, change lives, or transform society. That's what we do in our business. Doesn't say anything about the methodology, right? It just says what the end result is, because our job is to get our audience to this end result, which is writing a high impact nonfiction book. So I want to just pause here for a minute. And I don't know, can we unmute people? Is there?
Yeah, this is Linda Goldstein.
Hi, Linda.
Sorry, I couldn't get on for some. Zoom made me update.
Wait.
So sorry.
Oh, yeah. It asked me to update, and I said, no, not now.
It wouldn't let me
I use it
until
all
I did.
every day. And like, why now do you want me to update the? Okay. So I want you to think about the purpose of your business, and if you have something that you can kind of jot some notes down, let's work through this. I'm interested in what your answers are. So.
And we have a couple more. So Linda jumped on. Kelly from Offbeat Yoga jumped on.
Oh, good.
We have a couple more people. So just welcome. We have just started not too long ago, and she is going over a great starting point for when you're thinking about telling your story. So good.
Right. And so Rise's theme this month is branding. And so a key component to branding is telling your story. And so that's what we're focused on right now. And this is meant to be interactive. It would be real different if we were in the room together, but we're going to try to kind of struggle through the Zoom thing. But I want you to jot down what the purpose of your business is. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This is obviously something that you can play with afterwards too. So, and then I want to talk about it. So if anybody is ready to jump in and share on that, that'd be great.
Well, I'm happy to help to give people time to think. You know, the purpose of my business, the purpose of Rise Collaborative, is to create a pipeline for success for women of all ages and to increase access to social capital to women. Good.
You've obviously thought about that for a long time, Stacey.
Yes, I have. Yes,
and that's why we all bought in, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Who's next?
I can't see everybody's names, so I can't put you on the spot. I'll leave that up to Stacey.
Oh, the mean teacher. Well, Jessica, I just saw you unmuted yourself. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah.
So I'm just jotting things down. I have a mission statement, but I love the purpose statement as well. The purpose of my business is to help people's quality of life through a clean, high-tech, safe program.
Can you repeat that? You broke up a little bit. I didn't quite.
So what I literally just jotted down, and obviously I want to play with it a little bit, but the purpose of my business is to help people's quality of life through a clean, high-tech, safe exercise program.
And you're obviously doing that, because isn't that what I just said? Yeah. When I was describing you guys just through your ads or whatever. So anybody else?
The purpose of my business is to maximize the effectiveness of individuals and teams.
Oh, wow. Cool. Are you a coach of some kind, Linda?
Right, a coach and consultant. So I work with individuals, but I also work with a lot of organizations.
Okay, good.
And Linda, weren't you the mayor of Clayton before?
Yeah, I was.
Oh, you are? You're here. Yeah, okay. I'm in St. Louis too. I didn't know if you were here or in.
She's the former mayor of Clayton, the city.
Former mayor, yeah, first woman mayor. But I do a lot of work with municipal governments too.
Oh, wow.
And, boards and small businesses. But I love my
Yeah, that's
coaching
impressive.
business.
Yeah, thanks.
Liz or Kelly,
Okay.
do you want to share? No pressure.
You guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Turn my microphone on. The purpose of my business is to bring a lighthearted approach to yoga and help people move and feel better in their bodies.
Nice. Good. I like that. Well, let's move on to the next component, and that's our audience. And so the next thing you want to say, this fill in the blank thing, the audience for my business is, and you really have to know this, and I imagine that you all are already really confirmed in who your audience is. But for me, the audience for my business is coaches, speakers, entrepreneurs, overcomers, self-help writers, and business professionals. So how about you guys?
Liz, do you want to share that one? I feel like you, I've been listening only. Yeah. Sorry. Never mind. Just
Sorry. Thanks.
No, you're totally fine. No worries. Kelly, who does your yoga, would you say?
I would say it's mostly like people who never done it before, or they're like very not used to, they're not quite used to doing an exercise program or doing like a movement practice before. So I work with a lot of people that are brand new to yoga, and especially with our workplace programs, a lot of those people are just kind of looking to start out and in a beginner friendly atmosphere.
So I'm going to challenge you a little bit on that, if I might. And this is the same thing we talk to our authors about when they're writing books. It's like, how are we going to find these people if we can't kind of categorize them into it? So you're talking about people who are new to yoga. How do you find those people?
Well, I would say that it's kind of hard to, I guess it is kind of hard to categorize, because it's just, because it's definitely not a person that is super, I can picture what the person is not like. That's exactly, if that makes any sense.
I know, and that's what's hard about reaching audiences, is that you know more about who they aren't than who they are.
Right.
But if you can narrow it down a little bit, is it predominantly women? Is it women in a certain age group? And so if you can narrow it down like that, then you can get more targeted in reaching and finding your audience. So I would think about it in those terms.
Nancy, and I'm glad you said that, because I can say myself, and Kelly, I don't know if you've experienced that early on. So many people can benefit from Rise, just like so many people can benefit from yoga. It pains me to get really narrow and focused. Then you spin your wheels. And so something that I've been working on that. So I appreciate you saying that, because I know I always need that reminder of like, yes, everyone could benefit from it, but where are you spending your time, and where do those people live, and how do you get in front of those people? So I appreciate that.
where can you have the greatest impact for offering those two things we talked about, the hope and help? And so what I tell our authors is, I don't want anybody standing out on a street corner when their book is done and say, will somebody buy this thing? I want them to know where to go to find the people who will be interested. And so, you know, for that, say for, I'm sorry, I can't see your names on here because I'm not in that view, but the former mayor of Clayton.
Linda.
Linda, sorry. So you probably have a great idea of who our audience is, correct?
Well, you know, I know very specifically. I thought it was interesting that you would say to really narrow it down. I was trying to, when you first asked the question, and in yours, you say coaches, speakers, entrepreneurs. I was trying to think of categories, but primarily my audience is city managers, executive directors, presidents of small businesses, and then individuals who are trying to maximize their leadership skills.
So who most benefits? And the other thing about it too is what we encourage our readers our writers to do is to try to just really figure out where you can get the biggest bang for your buck. Meaning, if your buck is time, where, like what Stacy said, where am I going to focus my time? Where am I going to find a greater concentration of my audience? I would think that it would not be individuals, because it's just like in selling books. The hardest thing to do is sell books, one here, one here, one here. But if you can get an organization who will promote your book throughout their membership, then you've got, you know, inroads into something that is like I said, a bigger bang for your buck. So if you're working with businesses or governments or anyway, something to think about.
I would also say that it's kind of hard if you have multiple audiences too, because I feel like I have, you know, we do workplace programs, and that's a different audience than people at our actual studio. So I think that's why I have a really hard time deciphering.
But if you were to grow your business, and where would you go? Would you want to find individuals coming, or would you prefer, would it be better for you and more income and less impact if you grew it through business clients?
Right. Yeah, it's definitely something to think about.
Well, here's something else I want to tell you, because when our authors, they often have, well, I've got a bunch of audiences, you know, and the thing is that their material might be quite similar for all of those audiences. So what we encourage them to do is to write a series of books, kind of like the chicken soup for the soul, one for the coaches, one for the speakers, one for the, you know, you slap that name on it, you know, and it makes it intentional for that audience, and then you know how to market after them. So I am a huge, huge, huge believer in creating material and then repurposing it for other revenue producing products whenever you can, and have a core set of material. So when we're writing books, we have a way of structuring our chapters so that when the author is finished when the book is released, that book becomes a launch pad for them to deliver their message across multiple venues, where then it can be podcasts or online courses or video training and stuff like that, using that same core content. So if you have, it's just another way of thinking about the audience for your business. You may have different audiences, and then following this process or this formula, you can tweak your branding, you know, for the audiences, you know. So anyway, enough on this screen. So what happens when your purpose statement is, you end up putting those two things together, the purpose statement and the audience. So mine ends up being, the purpose of my business is to give coaches, speakers, entrepreneurs, overcomers, self-help writers, and business professionals the courage to tell their truth and the tools they need to write a high-impact nonfiction book that will save lives, change lives, or transform society. So I simply put slipped my audience into that purpose statement. And so now I know who I want to connect with and what I can do for them. And so I want to point out something else in this purpose statement is the verb in here. I can't use my, I thought I could point on something, but if you look at the verbs in this, the purpose of my business is to give. What am I going to give them, right? I'm giving them courage and tools, right? That's all I'm doing. I'm giving people courage and tools. So that's, you know, at the basic root, what is at the core of my purpose statement. It doesn't say that I'm going to change people or that I'm going to, you know, you have to be careful about the words you choose. You can only encourage, lead, guide, etc. people, right? Or offer them could be to offer them. And so maybe those of you in the exercise field, or you're offering them a comfortable body where they can do everyday things that they need to do without pain. I don't know, I'm just kind of making stuff up. So think about your verb, you know, because you can't make anybody to do anything. You can just offer them things. So, okay, so that we start with the purpose statement. So the other thing we want to talk about is, hang on, I got some notes here, so I don't want to get off on my ad lib thing here for so long that I forget to tell you what I really meant to tell you. So you've heard that there's 3 parts of a story, a beginning, a middle, and an end. Well, that doesn't really do you much good if you haven't written the story yet, right? That's kind of a retrospective look. So I like to use this formula instead for telling and crafting your story. What it used to be like, what happened, and what it's like now. So I didn't make this up. I've heard it before, but it fits really well. And so let's talk about how you can tell your exceptional story and use that in your branding. So what it used to be like. So again, we're talking about you, okay? Because you're the person that is behind your brand, that is going to be the one who's connecting with your audience. And so before you were where you are now, offering your expertise or services to others, what were things like? What were things like in the marketplace? You know, maybe you're filling a void. What were things like with you? Were you working in a job that, you know, you knew that wasn't your calling, you know? So we use that, what it used to be like, to start your story, okay? So in classic literature, this is called compare and contrast, because what you're going to do is you're going to say, you know, it was like this, then this happened, and now it's like this. And so you're contrasting the before and after. So for me, I was trapped in a high-paying, high-tech job that I hated, but I couldn't believe because I was too afraid. Well, I was too afraid because I was making too much money. And then, you know, you can get trapped by, you know, high salaries in something that you just really hate. And so that's what things used to be like for me before I am at this point now to offer people coaching and training on writing books and being a publisher of nonfiction books. So the next part is what happened. So this is the turning point in your story. It's an event or a series of events that bridges that, you know, time before and the time now. So what happened, it's like after which you might have this pivotal moment after which everything changed. And so for most of us, change comes about in one of 2 ways. We either have like this bright aha moment and we're like, I'm gonna do this now. But for most of us, it's something that's forced upon us. There's a death, a divorce, an empty nest, or the birth of a child, life-changing events that you actually didn't have much say in, but now you're in the middle of this and what are you going to do with it? So that's usually how humans encounter change and pivotal moments. So for me, and I want you to notice that it wasn't one event, it's a series. It's like ching, ching, ching. It's like turning the Titanic. It's really, 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 really slow, you know? So in my life, what happened is my father was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor, and we knew that he would only have about 7 months to live. So I quit everything and I traveled back and forth to Florida to be with my parents until he passed away. And then after he died, I had this opportunity. I came home and I'm like, oh, now what? I quit my job, And so, but it was a really opportunity to start over. But the other problem was I didn't know what I wanted to do. I really loved to write when I was young. I had things published. And so I decided I'm going to go back to school. And so I went back to school to get a master's degree in writing. Then I joined the faculty to teach writing. And at the same time I did that, I started a small press to publish nonfiction books. And so I was getting a ton of manuscripts from people that fit that trifecta of change lives, save lives, or transform society, but they were so poorly written that I couldn't do anything with them. I could barely find their points. And I knew that seed was in there. So I took a step back, and I actually had this God moment where I just really felt something kind of swoosh through me, in this total understanding that my job was to help thousands and thousands of people to get their message out of them and out to the world where it could do its work. But in order to do that, I needed to take a step back and help them by writing the step by step process to write a nonfiction book. So that's what I did, develop this methodology to help people who aren't writers to become authors. That's what happened, okay? So your what happened is probably a lot like that, like something, an event triggers something, and then things cascade, after that, that turn you in a different direction. Okay, so the what it's now like now portion, that's the after portion. What is life like now? How are you different? Or how are you contributing to society and to the other members of our planet Earth? And so for me, it's now the people I work with have become the voices of hope and help. And they're reaching out and changing people's lives simply by telling their stories. So when you put it all together, when you write your story and using that formula and then seal it, with that purpose statement, then you've crafted an exceptional story. So listen what it looks like when I put it all together. Okay, trapped in the high-paying job. My dad got a tumor. I did all this stuff. And I started, writing a course for people to write books. Now the people I work with are these voices of hope and help. And the reason I do this is to give entrepreneurs and business people the courage to tell their truth and the tools they need to write a high-impact nonfiction book that will save lives, change lives, or transform society. That is a branded story. That's what I use often in all the time, because it's the truth. That's what happened. People always want to know how you got to where you're doing. How did you get to this point of expertise? And you are experts. You're experts at what you do because you concentrated on it and you've put the time in and the sweat and the living through situations that make you that expert. But people want to know how you got there. And you already know this, but you can't tell people what to do anymore. That never works anymore. So what we have to do is we have to invite them along with us. And we have to remember that we're in the situation or in the position of being leaders. And that while we're leading, all we're really trying to do is turn around and grab somebody's hand and pull them up with us, And so it's critically important to be personal and to be able to share yourself with people. And when you do that in your storytelling, it automatically, it bonds people to you. And I've had some interesting experiences my life has been kind of weird in some ways, it has been, but I have no qualms about telling people what used to be dirty laundry. I'm a recovering alcoholic. So what? I've been sober 14 years, and that's great. A lot of my life I spend working with women who are recovering from drugs and alcohol abuse. I've been married 3 times, and guess what? That really wasn't my fault. The first guy I married had a whole secret life, and it all blew up after we'd been married 22 years. Second man I married, he was wonderful till we got married, and he became rather abusive. And then I ended up leaving him when the FBI came and raided for child pornography. So, that's weird stuff. But you know what? you're not going to think any less of me than that. You know, I'm married to an incredible guy now. But, you know, when you can connect with people with the real human element inside you, that, and truthfully, I encourage people in their writing to do this. And it's very hard for some people who are very just business oriented. They want to shield themselves in certain ways. But if you don't open yourself up, people can't learn anything from you if they don't know anything about you. And it's our duty to create connection in life. I mean, that's what we're here for. Just connect with each other. So through your brand, through your book, through anything, I mean, of course you have to be delicate. I mean, you don't want to give too much information and blow people away, but there's, you know, we all have some stuff in our lives that make us more human and more able to relate to. So we always encourage our writers to share those things in a appropriate way, you know, with the readers. So anyway, so what I want you guys to do now is to think about this, what it used to be like thing, because I want us to put this whole branded story together, and I have no idea what time it is. Okay, we got enough time. Stacey, you'll have to tell me when to.
Yeah, I got you.
I could go on forever about what.
No, it's great, and I love what you're saying. I do have a question, but I don't want to. You may get to this, so a part of me worries that I should just wait and see.
Go ahead, throw it out there.
So something that goes through my mind, I love the formula. I love what you're saying and how it really connects with the audience, and especially in a true story, like a book kind of way. What is going through my mind, and I don't know if it's going through our audience's mind, is how do we take that and distill that down when you're not writing a book?
Right.
You know,
when it's talking about your business. So when you let's start with this, okay? When you're talking about what it used, so it's all that stuff I told you about, my deep personal stuff, that's not appropriate for your business. And it's not appropriate for mine until I start working closely with people. And, you know, and what we do is very intimate, you know, in terms of sharing stuff. So that's appropriate to open that up in other folks. But for your business, when we're talking about the what it used to be like part, you can talk about what did you used to be like, or maybe what did the market used to be like? You know, what was it like before you got to where you're doing what you're doing? And so I would presume that for those of you in the exercise industry, you didn't start your business because there was nowhere to exercise, right? Right?
Right.
So why did you start it? What was missing? What was lacking? You know? Nobody wants to just be a Me Too thing. You know, you could open a franchise for that.
Well, I think for, at least for me, I felt like when you went to a yoga studio, it was like either one end of the spectrum than the other. Like either people were like pumping the music up like so loud and everybody was in their sports bras and it was like super intimidating, or it was the other end of the spectrum. It was like way too serious and a little bit like very traditional, like really traditional. So I just kind of like, I felt like there was no real middle ground, I guess, like for that. So
yeah, so think about that. That's what it used to be like. So what was lacking? You know, a fun place, or a relaxed place, or, you know, think about it in those terms. You know, what did you do before yoga, before this business?
I was school. I was elementary education. I did.
Okay, so, and I was trying to see if it was a change for you. You know, a change in, you know, workplace situations, and clearly it was. So would you say something like, I kept going to yoga studios, but I couldn't find anything that fit me? Either, you know, it was either, you know, people who were too intense, or other people who were just concerned about their outfit, or I don't know how we phrase it. I just like the clothes. I just like the yoga pants, which we're all wearing 24/7 about now, right? So think about these for yourself. I'm pausing here so you can kind of jot some stuff down. And so when I see you guys maybe nodding your head, that will show me that you're ready to move on to the next component. Stacy, tell us how RISE came about.
Yeah, so I was a former math teacher. Well, actually, before I tell that story real quick, when you, Kelly, you were speaking about yoga, it's kind of what I think about in terms of RISE in some ways. I mean, when I went from being a high school math teacher to starting a company, I started a tutoring coaching company for high school girls. I started working from home and was pretty miserable, and went to coffee shops and other co-working spaces that existed. And I sometimes talk about, not all the time, but sometimes I talk about the three little bears, it's kind of silly to say, but what Kelly is talking about made me think about that analogy, this idea of this place was too hot or this was too cold. And I don't mean it literally in terms of temperature,
right.
The idea that there wasn't a space that existed for me that fit what I was looking for. And since it didn't exist, I created it.
And I'm glad you did, because I had the same experience, because this is my office at home, but I always need to have a place where I, want to meet with clients, or I just got to get out of here,
Right.
And I'd been to other workspaces that were dirty, or they were dark, or, stuff like that. So same story.
Well, and I think for me, and I don't think this is everyone, but for me, where I work and my surroundings really trigger how I feel. Yeah, I'm seeing some head nods. I'm not surprised the people I attracted feel similarly, whereas other people, they could care less, right? And so that's why some of those details, like the dirtiness or the lack of light or things like that, really triggered me, and thought, there's no way I could work here.
I also didn't like working in a co-working space where people didn't somewhat dress decently. That really bothered me,
Yeah, professional polish.
Men coming in in cutoffs and sandals, and they hadn't, just men,
Those smelly, yucky men. No,
they just man spread, I'm just like, do you have to take up the whole table, kind of stuff. So anyway.
Totally get it. Yeah.
I like men.
Stacey, I think my biggest thing.
Yes. Jessica, what'd you say? I'm sorry.
I said my biggest thing for you, and there might be some commotion here in a minute. My little one's coming in. But my biggest thing with RISE, and why I have decided to become a social member for so long, is there's no pressure. There's always value in everything that you create. And I can't thank you enough.
That's such a nice thing to say. I appreciate that. And it's so funny to hear you guys talk, because when you're talking, our core values are coming out. Like Nancy, one of our core values is professional polish. That landed for you. Jessica, one of our core values is relationship first and growth minded. This idea of, I don't want to be hard sold, right? Like I don't want a transactional environment. I want something where people have the opportunity to step in if they want to, but there's no one that's harassing them or creating transactions so that you feel pressure. I don't like to be pressured, so I don't want to make anyone else feel pressure, but I'm going to try to give you growth opportunities. That's one of our core values that you can jump on if it's something you want. So I'm glad you're picking up on our core values.
This is literally, it's me, it's you and one other group I'm still in, and besides that, I don't do anything.
Well, we're glad to have you, Jessica. We're glad to have you. Yes. Linda,
so I'm going to move on. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. What were you saying, Nancy?
I was going to say, I'm going to move on to the next part, which is the what happened part. So things were one way, and then something was the turning point. So if you could jot down some of your thoughts about what happened, and a lot can be in the what happened. It's not just that, maybe something triggered the change. For everybody who quit a job to start a business, that's a pretty big what happened thing, right? So let's hear a little bit about your what happened part. And then when we're at the end of this, we're going to kind of share what we put together with each other, if you're so inclined. So Stacy?
Yes.
I'm gonna keep
No, please.
prodding you for your story. So
I'm happy to.
you couldn't find a place that suited you to work, Goldilocks, or you're either Goldilocks or the princess with and the pea. I'm not sure what.
I like it.
So what happened?
Yeah. What happened was it didn't exist, so I set out to create it. It was after, going to, actually, it's tough for me because it's a combination effect, right? So the backstory too is that I was interviewing smart, strong, successful women for my first company, Girls Dreaming Big, to help better shape and support those young women. And after interviewing 200 women, that's quite a bit of qualitative market research that I now know. And so it was like, enough's enough. They want what I want. It doesn't exist. So it's time to create it.
That's cool. That's cool. That's a good pivotal story.
Yeah. It only took me 3 years to get it open, but we did it.
Well, and it was much faster the second time, right?
Yes, much faster, much faster.
There is a definite painful learning curve the first time around.
Absolutely.
Linda,
Linda, we haven't heard from you. Do you want to share? Mixing it up so everyone's voices are heard.
I'm sorry. Who did you call on?
Yeah. Do you want to share any piece of this?
Oh yeah, I do. And I find this really fascinating. I think this is a terrific session, Nancy. So thank you. My story is that I was running a commercial flooring contracting business, and I had been there for a long time, headed up the company, and I loved my team, loved my employees, and felt like I was really helping them. And I was also serving as an elected official in the city of Clayton. So I ended up selling my business, and that was a good thing. And I was very concerned about who I sold it to. I wanted to make sure that my company stayed intact, that they didn't, dismantle it or anything. And I worked there for 7 years, heading it up still. And after 7 years, the new owner felt that he knew more about the business than I did, and he was making really bad decisions on behalf of the business. So I decided it was time to leave because I didn't want to be on a sinking ship after I had built the ship. And meanwhile, I was term limited out of office in Clayton because we have term limits. So it was just the perfect timing for me to start my own business, to really figure out, okay, what do I want to do? Basically, I want to do management consulting for municipal governments. And so that's what I did. That's what happened. I just felt that I needed to leave the business, and I had to leave because of term limits, elected office. I did not want to go any further. And so I started my business, which I have really loved doing.
So you mentioned something in there that makes me think, gets me back to the audience, and you said for municipal governments. So is that your key audience that you work with, or that? Yeah.
So I think that's where that's a differentiator, I think. But what I found is that, and people joke, oh yeah, we have 92 municipalities in the St. Louis area, so you should have a lot.
And none of them have any money.
Right. Yeah, right. So I've expanded it, because, and I find that former clients of mine, when I was in business, are hiring me now to do business consulting, to work with them and their teams and their companies.
Yeah.
So I originally started out just doing municipal governments. And now, and I feel, I feel that differentiates me, right or wrong, but a lot of governments don't have money, or they don't see the value. And so I've expanded to businesses and individuals too. My coaching business, I love to do.
Cool. Good. So that's what happened. So let's go to the what it's like now portion. And we should all know the after portion because we're in it, right? So this should be something maybe that could even we can just talk through, you know. And so what is your business like now? What is the marketplace like now that you're in it? What is your life like now? You know, how would you all answer that?
And it's constantly evolving. I think that's the interesting piece too, right? Like Rise, what the after portion for Rise, we're in 2 cities. We have almost 500 members.
Wow.
It's very fulfilling being able to build relationships with incredible women like yourselves. And I just feel so thankful that this is my career now. But, you know, like we're all navigating this interesting time of how, you know, markets are constantly changing and evolving, and how do we constantly change and evolve? I think in all of our businesses, you know, I know Kelly, you mentioned, you know, going into corporate versus having a studio, and just these different things as to how our businesses are constantly evolving and changing.
Right.
But does that change your purpose?
That's a good point. No, I always say you have to be really clear in your why, but your how and your what often evolves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you were to answer the question, what it's like now for Rise, what would you say? You said 500 members.
Yeah. I would say that we have a dynamic community of incredible women who are just so caring and thoughtful. And during this difficult time, I'm so grateful to them.
Well, I would also say there's more to it than that, Stacy, because you have a mentoring program for girls, you know, those kind of things. So it's like once you got your core thing going, that we're a workspace, then you could start, then you, as you know, somebody else mentioned that you started adding value in a whole bunch of different arenas, you know, so it's bigger. Rise is not a workspace. That's
right.
part.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
So kind of the evolution of how I set out to open this workspace because I needed one, but now it's become so much more.
Exactly.
Got it. I like it.
Yeah. So who else can talk about what it's like now? So I'd like to hear about the exercise coach. What's it like now?
So what it's like now, I mean, we are doing something that nobody else can do, because we're providing a program that no one else can duplicate.
What is that?
So we're a high-tech fitness studio. Mm-hmm. We do 20-minute workouts. Our majority of people that we're with are 40 plus. I mean, we have a few, but it's a safe environment. It's a clean environment. It's a studio environment. It's not a big box gym. We have our own high-tech equipment that actually measures each person's muscle strength. So we're working out it. We call it like, it's called Ride Intensity because it's based on the individual person in mind every step of the way. So between motivation, between showing progress every single step, between the one-on-one attention, between if the person has a physical limitation, we can accompany that. Like that's our thing. That's what we do. So I'm just happy. I mean, we were set out to open, we were opening one, and then a month later we opened the second one, and then a year and a half later we opened a third, and thank God right now we're on pause, but we're going to open a fourth. So, sorry, normal behavior here, being home. So we're just super excited. And that's kind of where we're at now. And we've got a lot of plans going to be able to support the community even more in such a beautiful way through exercise.
That's great. That's a good story to tell. So let's see, where are we on time? Oh, we're getting close. So when you tell your story, you're going to put it all together with your purpose, and we've been sharing them with the group. So this is something that if this formula appeals to you, I would really encourage you to work on it. And then, you know, how you can use that in your branding depends on whether you're speaking to people, you know, individually, or if you're doing some advertising or whatever, to make sure that you're communicating those things that are unique to you, you know, and that your purpose and your audience and those kind of things. So, I think that's my second to last slide. Oh, let me go back one. So do you guys have any questions about that, or is there anything else you want to add in terms of, you know, storytelling?
Well, my only other question is, how do you think about this in terms of, well, you shared your story, right? And how do you share that story when you're out there trying to get clients? You know, is that through emails? Is that through social media? Because that's quite a large story. It's a great story, but
It's not an elevator pitch. You're right.
Right. So, you know, how are you utilizing that story in these other facets of sharing about your brand?
Okay. I'm glad you said it. So like on your website, that's the about page, you know, that's where your story lives. When we're doing, we have a recurring messaging that goes through in our blog posts and our newsletters that we send out. It's always about, our goal is to, you know, work with people whose message will save lives, change lives, transform society. So that's replicated. In terms of, other than on the website, the story I told you myself is that when I get connected with people or get referrals, they always want to know, how did you get into this? I mean, like 99% of them ask me that. And by having something that's concise, and I don't start off, well, I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, you know, or given my resume or an elevator pitch, I tell them the story of how we got to be where we are right now. I mean, we're publishing 20 to 30 books a year, which that's considered pretty healthy for a small publisher. But that means all along in the way, we've got 40 and 50 people writing books at different stages the entire time. And so, so they always ask me that, and I know what to tell them. And so, you know, obviously other things happened within that time frame that I'm telling them about. But when I have it consolidated down into a story that answers the question, which what they're asking me is, how do you happen to have the credentials to do this? So, you know, I talk about where I started off, you know, that I was in high tech and, you know, things changed, you know. And it's interesting that, because the way my story changed, and I think the way yours have too, people respect that change. People don't say, well, you haven't been in publishing your entire career. Nobody ever says that to me, because I used to be a systems engineer for IBM and Oracle. But no, or with you, Stacy, nobody says, well, you're a high school math teacher. Nobody ever says that to you, right?
Right.
Not now. Not now, maybe in the beginning, but not now.
Right.
But people like to understand the evolution of change, because it shows that, for one thing, I think the example of your story shows that, you know, we're all expanding. Things are often changing. So if you're still doing the same thing you were 10 years ago, the same way you're doing it, you probably don't have any clients, because you have to change. So, right. Yeah. So anyway, that's the way I use it. So is that?
I like it. Yep.
Help?
That's great. That's helpful.
Yeah. So I just want to offer something, if you guys, to you all and to those who might be viewing this later, if you have any idea that you might want to write a book, all you have to do is text that word to me at that number. It's 636-400-1175, and we can start a conversation about it. And I'm not one of these people. I do not think that everybody should write a book. I just don't think so. You know, I think that if you are at a point where people are, you know, if you've been thinking about writing a book, but you haven't done anything because you don't know how to get started, that's a good reason to connect. Or if people are always telling you, oh, you ought to write a book, that's a good reason to connect. Or if you started writing something and you got all tangled up in it, that's a great reason to connect. So what we have, I've developed is really literally a step-by-step process to take you all the way, just from your idea all the way through the writing, the drafting, the editing, to publishing, to having it actually in your hands and on Amazon. So so if that interests you, great. You know, you may never want to write a book, and that's fine too, but I'm here to help if you do.